It's definitely not an understatement when I say I've had some of the best reading months I've ever had in my life. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Theo. Thanks for hanging out with me today while I do my March and April wrap up. I decided to combine them because I didn't read as much in March as I did in April, but as I alluded to at the beginning of the video, I've had some of the best reading experiences I've ever had in my life. I also wanted to fit this in somewhere. During April, I participated in the TBR Blitz Readathon held at the Keymark Discord. The team was the Golden Bards, led by Kayla at Kay's Hidden Shelf, and had an absolute blast with it. It allowed me to get through a bunch of books that were burning my TBR for a really long time. The prompts were so inclusive and so fun to hit. You were able to get a maximum 5 books with 3 points per book maximum, including, the bonus points and stuff. And while I had a blast and it worked really well, I ended up kind of screwing it up too, because the last book that I was reading, I was waiting, I did the review, and I went to submit it, and I realized I was submitting it just after 9 o'clock at night, my time, which is actually just past midnight Eastern, which was the cutoff. So the cutoff was 12:01 a.m. Eastern, and I was like 7 minutes late, and I messaged Kayla, and because she's an angel, she's like, you know what? I don't know if I can accept it. I don't think that would be quite fair. So I would have hit my 5 books with my maximum 3 points per book, except one book had 2 points, but this last one would have been another max 3 points, and I screwed it up in April, but I had a blast with it, and I think I'll do more readathons because they're super fun, and I would encourage you to get involved. Go to the Keymark Discord. They do a bunch of them. We're going to do some readathons and stuff over at the Grimoire Discord as well. Link is in the description if you haven't joined my community that I have with a couple other booktubers. So that's it. Readathon was fun. Kind of screwed it up in April, but let's go ahead and talk about all the books. I started off with this book, which ended up being a patron pick. A bunch of people voted on it, and this one came up more than once, so I decided to pick it up, and that is Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is book number 1 in the Greenbone saga. The premise here being there are 2 conflicting mafia-type clans or families that are in this city, and they have this hereditary ability within these families genetically to be able to harness jade and use jade by wearing it usually to enhance their own abilities. That's kind of their superpower, and that's why they're called green bones. Most people can't use jade. They get sick when they handle it. Other people are completely immune, and so this is just inert to them, so there's no point. But you can imagine that in this city, jade is heavily controlled, and the plot kind of starts with the fact that it's getting more and more difficult to control it, and there's something that comes on the market that allows people, regular people, to kind of use jade, which is not good for these families that use jade in order to maintain control. It's very mafia-like, and yeah, the plot was super fun. I had a really good time with this one, and I gave it 5 stars. The characters are incredibly compelling. It's a family drama at its core. The world building and the lore is rich and fun to read about, and it was interesting how these families came to power. Basically, they started using jade and their enhanced abilities to protect citizens of this island country against invading enemy forces and like neighboring countries to keep their independence and kind of, stay safe and stuff. And so it was interesting that way. It didn't start with any ill intent, but it becomes this criminal underworld where, businesses pay tribute for protection, that kind of stuff. Like, it's very mafia-esque, and I really enjoyed it. The action was also incredible, though not as much of it as I thought I would get. But Fonda Lee is a black belt in Kung Fu, and I believe, and the action that we do get in here is expertly crafted. The choreography, the realism, the stakes felt high. There was intrigue and suspense throughout this whole thing, and I had an absolute blast. I would highly recommend it. I think that this would be a fantastic adaptation. In fact, I heard whispers that there might be something in the works. I don't actually know, but if this doesn't get adapted, there's a huge missed opportunity. I would highly recommend this if you like, action, fun magic, urban fantasy, if you like anything with mafia and stuff, if you like old mafia movies, I think there's a lot to like in here. Then I finally got to this book, which I'd been meaning to read for a long time, and that was Ship of Magic. This is the first book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. This is a nautical book that centers around this seafaring trading family that happens to own a live ship, something that very few families are able to to do and afford. It takes years to build one, and it takes generations in order for it to come into its sentient magic. And there's certain criteria that has to be fulfilled before that even happens. This one is kind of a slow character first story. And in fact, I found, like, I don't know how many pages it is. It's almost 900 pages. And so I found it to be a little bit slow and a little bit long, but there was so much packed into here. It was incredible. The audiobook is terrible. Don't do it. I gave it a 4 or 4.5 out of 5. I can't remember, which is excellent for me. I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to continue. There's compelling characters, like I said, with their own goals, their own motivations. They're fun to follow, and they're so expertly crafted that that's kind of what kept me going through this particular book. Even though there's plot and there's some twists and turns and some revelations and stuff, really it was the characters that made this book so special. I should also mention that this book was a lot deeper than I expected. It touched on so many themes like gender roles and slavery and free will and fate and faith and being true to yourself and perseverance through adversity and all that kind of stuff. Like, if you like thematic elements in your book, really compelling characters, and just a slow burn story where you get so much out of following these people and these lives and getting so attached and needing to know how their arcs, how their stories continue, I would highly recommend this trilogy. If you haven't read it, I would start with the Farseer trilogy, but then this is the first book in the second trilogy in the whole realm of the Elderlings. I would highly recommend it. Now, I also read this very special book, and I read part 1 in March, which was Storm of Swords, and I basically split it into 2. It's often published in 2, but I read half of it in March, and I had an absolute blast with it, and I continued reading it all through April. I took my time with it. I savored it. I really enjoyed it. This is a special book. We'll talk more about it later when I talk about my April reads. The first one I picked up in April is another special book to me. It just landed perfectly for me. It became an all-time favorite. It just resonated with me, and I had a blast with it. That is David Gemmell's Legend. I did a dedicated review for this one because I loved it so much, and there's so much to say. I won't repeat it too much here. If you're interested in my thoughts, go check out that review. But basically, it's excellent classic heroic fantasy with very deep themes stemming from an interesting background with the author and when this was written and under what circumstances he decided to write this story. Check out my review for more on that. This next one was on my TBR since December 2020 when my wife bought it for me for Christmas. It was one that was talked about all over the internet, like BookTube and all that stuff. And for some reason, I just never got around to it. I think part of the reservation was the fact that the series isn't finished, but that is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. We have 3 books out right now in the Gentleman Bastard series, and this is book number 1. I was absolutely shocked at how much I enjoyed this one. I called it in my review a near masterpiece. It was a joy to read, unique, extremely fun. And if you haven't read this, I would urge you, like people urge me, just put down what you're reading right now or finish it quick and get to this book immediately. It's basically about this band of thieves and con artists in this city that is dark and gritty, and the atmosphere is kind of mystical, smoky, lantern, back alley, dark, gritty, built on canals with this old architecture. There's a clear separation between the haves and have-nots, and the stuff that they get into and the plotting. There's basically a heist at the heart of this story that I thought was exceptionally well done. All of that is set against a backdrop of political intrigue and corruption. There were twists and turns and some jaw-dropping moments, and I thought this was expertly plotted, very well paced. The writing is magnificent. I've become an instant fan of Scott Lynch's writing. I think next month I'll probably be picking up the second book, which is Red Seas Under Red Skies, and I would highly recommend this. I gave this a 5-star if that wasn't obvious already. Next, I picked up the sequel to the Greenbone Saga, book 2, the middle book in the trilogy. That is Jade War, and I gave this one a 5-star. I gave Jade City 5 stars. I gave this one 5 stars, and we're rolling on into Jade Legacy at some point, maybe this month, maybe next, but I can't wait to conclude this trilogy. As a book 2, this thing was phenomenal. It doesn't suffer from middle book syndrome at all. It did everything I wanted it to. It take a bit more of a macro approach here, a macro lens with neighboring countries and, continued rivalry and, Jade War. It gives it away a little bit as to what you can start to expect. The characters continue to be compelling. They get more fleshed out. The relationships between them, the dynamics continue to be deepened. The world building is excellent. The lore is enriched, and you just get more of everything you liked from Jade City in my case. Again, I gave it 5 stars, expertly paced, plotted, jaw-dropping moments, really fun scenes, and you know, there's some twists and turns again. Fonda Lee is just really good. Her writing is accessible and it serves the story very well. I had a blast with it, and I can't wait to continue with Jade Legacy as soon as possible. Next, we get to something very special, and that is the second half, or part 2, of A Storm of Swords. This is George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series, book 3, the Game of Thrones universe book series, and I had an absolute blast with this one. This book has become my favorite fantasy book of all time that I've ever read, ever in my life. And I know that a lot of other people feel that way. If you poll 10, 15, 20, 100 people, you're going to get, I think, a lot of people that mention this book as their favorite book of all time, or their favorite, you know, series of all time, but definitely their favorite fantasy book of all time. That sentiment is echoed over and over again. I can't say too much about the book without spoiling stuff because it's book 3, but there are so many things that happen in this book that were gratifying, so many shocking moments. I don't know how he put so much stuff into this book without making it feel overlong or meandering in any way. All the POVs are fun to follow. The whole thing was satisfying as a package, and of course, it benefits from an expertly crafted story through book 1 and 2 to get the rewards and the moments and have everything land so impactfully in this book. But we get the start and continuation of some story arcs, some character arcs. The development in this book is insane. And this one is one that I would probably reread. Like now I see why people would reread A Song of Ice and Fire, even though it's not complete. The journey is worth it. And of all the books so far, I would reread Storm of Swords, and I feel like it would be a blast every single time. So start to finish, this book was incredible. It has become my definitive favorite fantasy book I've ever read. Now I get it, and I'm excited to continue with A Feast for Crows. At some point, probably next month, we'll pick back up with that read along. I know it's continuing. I took a bit of a natural break with it because I know that there's a bit of a narrative shift with the last 2 books that we have published, Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons or something. Those ones are done a little bit different. I think it's the same timeline split into 2 books following different POVs. So this was kind of a natural breaking point. So I just wanted to do a mood read May, which is what I'm doing now, and get back to the series as soon as possible, probably next month. But I had a blast with it. Obviously 5 stars. If I could give it like 7 stars, give it all the stars. 10 stars, I don't care. Give it all the stars. All right, then my reading kind of took a shift, and I was all of a sudden in the mood in April for a crime, detective, cop, thriller, mystery type novel. And so this series was recommended to me a bunch. I know some people that have loved it. The author is said to be very consistent and very good. These are just very satisfying palette cleansers, and that is the Harry Bosch universe. So I picked up book number 1, The Black Echo. I listened to it mostly on audio because it was on Scribd, and it was absolutely perfect. It was like listening to a TV show, and I know that there is a TV show. A lot of people have probably watched it. I actually haven't, but I really enjoyed this one for what it did. So we have this maverick LAPD detective who has this tough guy exterior, who's a bit of a softie on the inside, very compelling. Interesting background, kind of strong silent type a little bit, except when he has to kind of be in your face and like take care of business a little bit. So he's a fun character to follow, very nuanced, and I'm so like we get just enough to know where he's coming from and appreciate why he is the way he is. But also there's a lot of mystery about him and a lot of intrigue, and I'm curious how his character will develop and how he's going to act in different situations as he continues in this book series. I'd say overall it was a very well crafted cop, detective, crime, thriller, mystery, whatever the hell you want to call it. And he basically he gets called to find a dead body in a tunnel, and he starts to put the pieces together. There's a lot more that gets uncovered, and it's, of course, not everything is the way that it appears. And so he gets wrapped up in this mystery. He knows some background about this crime that he didn't expect when he went to the scene. And so his story and his background gets pulled a little bit to the forefront in this plot. And it was awesome. I gave it 4 stars. I'm going to continue. These are excellent palette cleansers. I do have some minor criticisms for it, where at times it felt a little bit tropey, but most of it is welcomed, and I just had a good time with it. There's just one thing where there's kind of a romance or a love interest that flourishes, and I thought that it was done kind of quickly and didn't really feel organic or authentic for the character of Bosch. There were some things that he probably should have been aware of or careful about, and I just feel like he's a little bit more of a reserved person and he wouldn't have jumped into things as quickly, but it served the plot and it becomes very, very important. And I understand that Harry is kind of a loner and he is seeking love and relationships. It's not that this relationship wouldn't have happened. It's forced on you a little bit quickly and you're like, oh, okay, I guess this is where we're going. But as I said, it actually worked and it served the plot really well. And at the end, I actually liked Harry a little bit more, seeing that side of him, to be honest. So it served the character and it served the plot very well. It just kind of came quickly and I wasn't expecting that. And I didn't feel at the beginning that it worked, but it ended up working. I had really good time with it. If you like the Dresden series as a fantasy series, but you want something kind of real world, like cop thriller detective type novel, and you like TV shows like that, I think this is a great series to pick up. Again, like Dresden, it's a great palate cleanser. It's a little bit episodic. I think you can kind of just pick up these books however, whenever. I'm just going to read them in publication order. So yeah, I liked it. 4 out of 5, solid book. I can tell why Michael Connelly is considered a very good, satisfying, consistent author, and I enjoyed it. Lastly, in April, I picked up The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. I was lucky enough to be given an e-arc for this revised, traditionally published through Orbit version of this book, and I had an absolute blast with it. I thought it was very well done. It was an impressive debut, and somehow he was able to, like I said in my review, my Goodreads review anyway, capture the essence and the beauty of jiu-jitsu as a martial art itself. And he was authentic and real with the hand-to-hand combat. As someone who has done multiple martial arts through his whole life and now does jiu-jitsu exclusively as a passion, this was the book that martial artists would want. So while the premise itself sounds really fun, you have a really good plot and really interesting main characters. Some of the ancillary characters I didn't care for as much, but some of the side characters were actually very important and are kind of like sub-main characters almost, like they felt really important. I thought the pacing was really good. It's punctuated with moments of calm and flashbacks and some training montages. This book is basically a blend of like sci-fi Ender's Game meets like Rocky, and I thought that it was done in a way that was very satisfying for me. I think a lot of people would find a lot to enjoy in this one. There were some twists and turns and actually full-on revelations and some shocking moments in this book where at the end I couldn't believe what happened, and I was like, oh, wait a second, like I need to continue reading with this. I'm definitely curious to see where this series continues after this book, and I want to thank Alexander Darwin for giving me the opportunity to read and review it. I gave it a 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. Definitely an impressive debut that expertly weaves combat sports and martial arts into fantasy in a way that's done authentically and with respect, and I loved it. And so kudos to him. Can't wait to see more from him, and wish you guys all the success with this book and this series. It comes out June 13th, and that's it for me. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the books that I read in the last couple months. As I said, I've had the best reading experience that I've had probably ever, definitely since starting BookTube. I hope your experience is similar and you're reading amazing books and having a really good time. Let me know in the comments all about what you're reading and enjoying. I love to talk to you guys there. Subscribe if you haven't. Check out the Grimoire Discord. All my socials are linked down below as usual. I won't take up more of your time. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the next video.